Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As you can tell from the title, today's video is going to be my October wrap-up / November TBR. So without further ado, let's start with my October wrap-up. So in October, I read a total of 6 books. 3 were on my Kindle and 3 on physical books. I really thought I was going to read more just because I went on holiday, but lo and behold, I did not. The first 3 books that I'm going to talk about were part of my reading nothing but spooky books for a week. And if you haven't seen that video yet, I will link that down below. But spoiler alert, I only read 3. Spoiler alert again, the 3rd book made my week-long challenge into a 2-week-long challenge. So let's start with the first book that I read, and that was Mariana Enriquez's The Danger of Smoking in Bed. This is translated from Spanish and it is a collection of short horror stories. There are 12 in total, and the 2 that really stuck out to me were Dear Heart, Where Are You and Meet. It was so good in a sense that for such short stories, because some of them were like, I think most actually were less than 10 pages and the longest was like 50. I absolutely breezed through all of them. I mean, it's literally like 180 something pages. Each story made me feel like different emotions, if that makes sense. There was some that made me emotional, some that made me feel a bit creeped out, some were a bit icky, some were really funny. So you had that wide variety. So I think that contributed to why I didn't find it repetitive at all. So if you're looking for something like a short horror story that is told as if you're sitting around a campfire, then definitely go for this. I gave this one a 4 stars. So the second book that I read in that challenge was Kaylin Bayron's You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. This I only picked up on my Kindle because I saw Silly Little Books on Instagram talk about it, and I hadn't heard anyone talk about it before. But it was a summer camp setting and it was a slasher plot, and that is like my favorite. I love a slasher movie, especially when it's a summer camp setting, so I couldn't really say no, and it was just perfect for like the spooky season. It was 99p on Kindle, so obviously just went and got it, and I gave this one a 4 stars as well because it just gave everything a slasher was supposed to give. The plot twist at the end, nothing crazy in my opinion, but it was perfect, if that makes sense. It really added value to the plot. I love the characters, and it was definitely more of a YA setting than it is like an adult horror. So if you're looking for something that gives that kind of 90s 2000s slasher-esque plot, then definitely pick this one up. And then the 3rd book that I unfortunately spent way too long reading was The Cursed Bunny by Bora Chung. This I gave a 3 stars, and I think that's me being quite generous, quite frankly. It's not that it was a bad book. I think I maybe have just read it at the wrong time because I just read The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, but this is translated from Korean and it's a collection of short horror stories as well. There's 10 in this one. I'm not gonna lie, I couldn't tell you which one stood out to me the most. I think it was the one to do, actually no, I'm lying. I think it's Home Sweet Home that stood out to me. I really like that, if that's the one where, if you've read it before, it's the mother and a son in like a building. I think the downfall of this was the longer story because I just DNF'd that. I don't really have the urge to figure out what happened at the end. I just couldn't get into it. And then so after that, I just carried on with the remaining 2 stories. I mean, it was still enjoyable, but I definitely found myself comparing the 2, and I preferred this over this. But I think I will probably pick this up another time when I'm not reading it as a challenge and when I'm not reading something very similar to it. So the 4th book that I read in October, obviously after the challenge, was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. Don't get me wrong, it was like a cute book, but I think I initially gave it 3 stars, and I think I'm gonna have to lower that down to a 2.75 stars. It's not that it was a bad book, don't get me wrong. I just didn't feel like, I don't know, maybe it was just way too hyped up because everybody was talking about it. It was a cute enough story. I just felt like I read it and was like, wait, what is actually going on here? Not a lot of things happen in it, basically. It's all vibes, no plot. And if that's something that you're fine with, then absolutely go for it. But I like my books with a slightly more depth. I don't need it to be super deep, but I think that the book could have gone a little bit deeper into each character's kind of personality, but it just really didn't give what I thought it would. So I gave that one, unfortunately, a 2.75 stars. Okay, and then moving on to the next book, it was one of my most anticipated like books of just the entire year. It was Hopeless by Elsie Silver. So this is Bo Eaton's story, and his partner is Jasper. His partner's not Jasper. His partner is Bailey Jansen. Jasper is his friend. Bo Eaton and Bailey Jansen. So it's giving very much like star-crossed lovers. Like, he is the prince of the town and he's a hero, and she's kind of like looked at as scum because of her family. It's a fake engagement trope. and it's an age gap trope as well because she is early 20s. I think she's like 23 and he's like 35. I gave this one a 4.5 stars. It is probably my second least favorite out of all of them, but don't get me wrong, it's a 5-star Infinity Star series, like Chestnut Spring series. Like, oh, I love it so much. Bo Eaton was just so good. Let's just say the boy knows how to communicate. If you've read it, then yeah, you know what I mean. He knows how to talk, let's just say, and he was perfect. He was everything. And it took away actually from the country cowboy bull rider era of like, you know, the Cade, the Theo, the Rhett. It was very much more like he was someone who was in the special forces, and he has his PTSD from something that happened in the previous book, and I really liked the depth that they gave his character. She was fine. Like, I don't think she was anything special. I don't think she's a Willa. I don't think she's a Sloane. Or Winter, like honestly any of the other girls, but I did feel really bad for her. Her storyline is quite sad, but the age gap really shows in them, because although there was an age gap with Cade and Willa, I didn't feel that, whereas with these guys I did, because she was actually quite immature in my opinion, and she was trying really hard to be mature and independent, but her immaturity did come out in the emotional parts of it. But yeah, I still gave that a 4.5 stars, and I was still really happy to have read it. Just really sad that that's the end of the Chestnut Spring series. And then the final book that I read in the month of October was a 4 stars, and that was The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. A lot of people have really mixed reviews about it, but usually people say that they absolutely love it. This is my first venture into a supernatural romance, and let me tell you, like, it was so cute. I absolutely loved it. I went into it knowing roughly what it was about, but the twist that happens was just so like, oh my god, and it blew it from like a 3.5 stars to a 4 stars, and I just absolutely loved, especially like the last third of the book. Really cozy, really cute, absolutely recommend it. So those were all the books that I read in the month of October. Now let's talk about the books that I would like to read in the month of November. So I have 10 books that I am hoping to at least pick from in a month of November, because I am such a mood reader that sometimes I just won't bother following my TBR. And then with the added stress of a Kindle Unlimited, like where it's just so easy to pick all these free books, but I'm going to try and stick to this physical TBR anyway. So the first book I've got here is Mona Awad's All's Well. I have really high hopes for this because I love Mona Awad. I've read Bunny, which was great, and then I read 13 Ways of Looking a Fat Girl, did not like it, but I've heard really good things about it. It is giving dark academia but fever dream, and I think it follows like a group of people who are putting on Shakespeare's All's Well That Ends Well. I don't know much else about it, which is how I'd like to keep it, so I'm very, very excited. I also have Lapvona by Ottessa Moshfegh. I have had nothing but crazy reviews about this book because, first of all, Ottessa Moshfegh, like, say less, but the actual book itself is apparently just like a wild ride. It like talks about religion. It's in that like almost medievally time, and there's like just weird, gross things happening. I say gross, but apparently it's just like, it's just a fever dream of a book as well. So I am, again, very excited to read this. Next, I have Babel by Arif Kwang, which I'm actually going to be buddy reading with Sophie on Instagram. I will link her down below. I did start this, and you can see that I was on chapter 4. I was on page 69. And I started tabbing it a little bit, but I found this really like difficult to read in the sense of physically, because it's a chunky book and then it's like a hardback, so I'm gonna give it a go anyway, and November is the perfect time for dark academia reads, so we are gonna give this a go, and I think doing it as a buddy read is going to really encourage me to actually finish it this time around. Next up, we have Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe, which I believe is the second installment. I absolutely love the first one, and I read that this time last year, and it gives that really cozy but emotional kind of, I don't know, vibe, and I just wanted to carry that on, and I didn't want to binge through the series just because, I don't know, it's such a particular emotion for me that I feel like November was the time to pick this bad boy up. Next up, we have Tenderest de Flesh by Augustina Basterica, and let me tell you that I have been putting this book off for so long. I was going to read this in October, but I just couldn't get around to it. General consensus is that most people who read this, who eat meat, kind of get put off for a little bit afterwards. And apparently there is a plot twist at the end that is just like crazy. So for a book that is like not that long at all, this must be like less than 300 pages. It's 219 pages. So I feel like I can power through this and just experience this book, because I did see, I can't remember what it's called, but she has another book out, and I really want to pick it up, but I thought I'm not gonna get it until I actually get round to Tender is the Flesh. So guys, like, keep me in your thoughts. The next book I have here is a long time coming. I started it a little bit, but I wanted to keep it for the autumn. I don't know why, it was giving autumn vibes. It is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. It is about time for me to jump on the Magnolia Parks Daisy Hates train. This is supposed to be Gossip Girl, but in London, and it's toxic relationships. It's like that whole, yeah, literally like Gossip Girl. So I want to know why everybody is like obsessed with every single character. So I am ready to fully immerse myself into the world of Magnolia Parks. Next, we have a contemporary, and it is Acts of Service by Lillian Fishman. I have heard really good things about this book. I'm pretty sure it follows 3 people who basically come together and form this relationship and explore sexuality. It's a really, really short book. It's like just over 200 pages. I know not much else about it, but I'm still very excited to get to this one. Next, we have another contemporary, and that is Daddy by Emma Cline. And the cool thing about this is it is a signed copy. Like, hello. It follows like a man who's a father, and then just like a young woman trying to live her life in LA probably. I don't know anything else about it, but with a cover like this, I couldn't not pick it. Okay, so the next book I have here, I am really, really excited about, and I think it really screams November to me, and it is The Book Eaters by Sunyi Dean. I've heard so many people talk about it, and I really thought that this was a completely different story, and actually it just sounds so much better. I think this is like a darker fantasy. Again, I don't really know much else about it, but the reviews were enough to make me want to pick it up. And then the last book that I've got, let's just say it's not going to be November without a proper dark academia book. So this year's dark academia book is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. If you know me, you know that The Secret History is my favorite book of all time, well, one of, and I like to read a dark academia book maybe once a year because they can be quite similar to each other, that I don't want to read them kind of quite close to each other because I think that will stop me from enjoying the later books. So this year I've decided that If We Were Villains was going to be it. It was a long time coming for me to pick this book up, but I have heard so many people who think The Secret History is like the best dark academia book, if not the best book in their opinion, say that this actually gives it a run for their money. I think with this one though, instead of just dark academia, they are like theatre students. So they are at an elite conservatory. Okay, so I love that there's that slight difference to it, that it's not just your, you know, bog standard bunch of kids going to like a prestigious school. So yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting, and I think this is probably my most anticipated read of the month. So those are all the books that I read in October and the books that I will hopefully be reading in the month of November. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.